To kick off this season, we are talking about trans parental rights. And if you're listening and you're not trans or even a parent, you may think, well, this issue is not about me. But we're at a very critical time in our history. And we must choose love for each person there is. And if we don't protect those who are the least amongst us, it'll be our time to protect ourselves because they'll come after us next. This episode is brought to you by our executive sponsor, AHF, the AIDS Health Foundation. AHF is an excellent place for you to get your gay healthcare needs met, even when you struggle to afford it. Check them out at ahf.org. And if you're watching this on YouTube or as a podcast, remember to subscribe and share us with your friends. It means so much. Now help me give a round of applause to our Gaily Dose family, Bernardo Luvo, Ginger Nichols, Daniel Pessolaro, Marci Alt, and our creator, Helmut Lucero Love.
We want to welcome you all to the House of Love here at the Gaily Dose, where everyone is welcome, and we do mean everyone. We're kicking it off this season with this new format. We're excited to bring people together to listen and discuss these various issues that are facing our community. And we're going to start it off with the gay good news.
Yes.
Hey!
So I'm going to kick this one off. Earlier this month, Oregon passed mandatory coverage for all trans health care. The legislation helps ensure that many transgender procedures are considered to be part of standard care. This means that affirming care can be gained on medical coverage and their medical coverage insurance. They also took big steps to protect reproductive rights for women. So I say, congrats, Oregon!
Absolutely. So let me get this right. Oregon, Florida is like Disney moving to Oregon because they sound like they have a lot more loving leadership.
Right? Isn't that funny? It sounds like a modern twist on the Oregon Trail. But now we're moving to other states just to be our chosen selves.
It's crazy. Let's talk about Nashville. You know, recently they had a young person that wanted to go to their prom, but instead of wearing a dress, they wanted to wear a suit. And that was a problem.
Isn't that ridiculous?
I mean, seriously.
They can't handle a kid in a suit. How are they going to handle a room full of teenagers grinding up all up in each other's
Right, and it's 100% the truth. But it was a Christian school in Nashville, so we know that kind of played into it a little bit. But the good news was that there are some amazing people in Nashville. A couple and a mother saw the post online and kind of took it from there. And they decided they were going to do a private prom for these kids. They were able to invite 25 of their friends and had their own private prom.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I have another really great piece of gay good news here in Atlanta. Meek Productions celebrated 20 years of service as the world's first exclusively LGBTQ talent agency company. Miko is the most loving and caring person. We attended the event and it was so nice to see how much love the community has for him. He's truly special. He's here tonight. So thank you so much. Give it up for Miko.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, Councilwoman Keisha Waits was there, hosted the event. Some of us were there, and I just don't think that everyday citizens, everyday gay people out there realize how hard people like Miko and anyone in gay media actually works, but out of a sincere desire and love for the community. It's often thankless work, it's a lot of unsexy work, and the reality is, as members of that community, I just acknowledge how much hard work and dedication that is behind 20 years. Awesome. Well, I think that we had, let's see, Oregon legislation that's encouraging, right? We've got a national prom and we have Meek Productions. I think that's a good wrap to
the gay good news.
So now we're going to shift to our main topic, which is the trans parental rights discussion. Now, this discussion is brought to you by Zuka. Zuka is a long-standing supporter of the gay community here in Atlanta and the surrounding area. Check them out at zukapizza.com. Now, as many of you know, there was an explosion of gay legislation, anti-gay legislation. 528 total anti-gay bills were introduced this year alone, compared to previous years. And of those, 156 of those bills touch on trans health care. There are about 58,000 estimated lives in the 15 states where we're seeing the worst of this. States like Utah, Mississippi, and unfortunately sweet old Georgia with SB 140 has the same issue. It's already passed legislation in this state, and it will strip parents of their ability to love and care for their children. Now here in Georgia, doctors will be not able to prescribe medicine to children, basically hormone therapy after their puberty blockers. That basically means the child's going to be stuck in a prepubescent state till 18. Like, that's not viable, that doesn't work, that's no bueno. And those people effectively have to leave our state of Georgia to care for their children. That takes effect here in Georgia July 1st. So there's a lot of people and a lot of angst in this state and in many others. And the biggest hope that we have is the ACLU. The ACLU will take legislation, and basically, they've already done this in Montana, and they said, hey, this is unconstitutional, you're stopping us from our ability to care for our children, my parental right to care for my child, okay? And this, as a parent, makes me furious. I'm curious who else at this table is upset.
I'm greatly upset. You see, we're actually handcuffing parents from saving their children with life-saving care. The American Medical Association, Psychological Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they all oppose these laws. A University of Washington studied a group of trans people receiving affirming care versus a group of trans people that did not get affirming care. They were 63% less depressed and showed 73% less suicidal compared with the lives that did not receive the affirming care. That's crazy.
You know, guys, I hear this all the time. What is affirming care?
Well, Daniel, affirming care is like social changes, like clothing, hairstyles, pronouns, what bathroom you want to use, like the things that like impact you every single day, like what you're dealing with every day.
Okay, so when a kid says he wants to be referred as a he instead of a she. Yes. Okay.
But now there's other kinds of gender affirming care besides the social affirmations. Like there's puberty blockers, those like stop development of an Adam's apple and things like that. Then you go to like hormone replacement therapy, whether that's testosterone or estrogen, depends on your own situation. And then at the very end, that's where you finally get to like transitioning through surgeries. And that only happens in about like 35% of the cases where they actually go completely through with a full transformation. So there's a lot of things that go on that happen.
And not all surgeries are genital.
They don't seek out surgeries all the time. Like that's not an option for everybody. They don't have to do this.
Right, and there's very few before 18. Very few. Which we'll have our nurse practitioner come out and tell us.
This attack on our community is disturbing, but worse is the anti-trans sentiment within our own gay community itself. It is a big missed opportunity because we have honored trans legends like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, who have played a vital role in our progress. So let's just stand united, fight for each other, and make our movement stronger than ever. Also, before you judge a person, take a moment to talk to a trans person. Give them a chance to show you the beautiful human beings they are, just like you.
You know, identity is what we know ourselves to truly be. And I know that I'm attracted to the same gender, and a trans person knows that they are a different gender. If you understand one, you understand the other, okay? So we gotta empathize, and that's why I'm so grateful and honored to have worked alongside our gaily dosed mother, Diane Crow, that has taught me, she has taught me and taught all of us so much over the years about the trans community, so thank you so much.
So we're all part of the same community. We're all humans. But you see, what gets me is I can see the mix of feelings on the issues, even more so within parents. I myself had a child who thought she may be a trans man for a time. As a parent, it's not easy to navigate these waters. We have to learn. And to help us learn, I want to introduce to you an Atlanta-based practitioner. Her name is Jenny Best.
Hey! I do want to speak to you a moment about Sojourn. Sojourn is actually stands for the Southern Jewish Resource Network for Gender and Sexual Diversity. And they educate and they advocate throughout the South. but their voice is very much one of those that is being heard in state houses and supporting us. You can check them out and donate at sojourngsd.org. And I'm going to give a real quick shout out to Representative Park Cannon, who I happened to meet at the Meek Productions event and brought us Nurse Practitioner Jenny. All right. So I first want to say thank you, Jenny. Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here and to shed some light on this topic. And thank you for having this conversation.
What do you love about caring for these youth? What is it that makes you so excited to do this work every day?
Well, I am so thankful to do this work. Being a provider of gender-affirming care for young people is such a privilege. The young people I work with are incredibly self-aware, expressive, creative, articulate, and thoughtful, and the families are loving, supportive, concerned, and motivated to help their children live safely in this world and to be their most authentic selves. Both the patients and the families are enthusiastic about and engaged in their care. And so it's just a really wonderful and rewarding thing to be part of their journey and ultimately to help them thrive.
What are the results of, we all know what happens when we do affirm, but what happens when we don't do that? And somebody is not allowed to use the chosen name that they want to use, or dress the way they want to dress, or go to a different bathroom than what they... Social affirmations.
Gender affirmation in its many forms is so powerful and highly protective.
Do you know the number one thing everyone in this world wants to hear, including you and me? We all want to hear our name. It's especially true for gender diverse youth. You may know that trans youth are at very high risk for suicidal ideation and attempt. But did you know that using a
chosen name can actually decrease suicidal ideation by 29%?
And decrease suicidal behavior by 56%?
So that's really significant. Access to affirming spaces is also so important, and anti-trans legislation, including bathroom bills,
can be very harmful. Bathroom bills can increase discrimination and decrease feelings of safety, and actual safety. Gender diverse youth with restricted access to restrooms and locker rooms in schools have an overall sexual assault prevalence of 36%, much higher than their cisgender peers.
But there's so much that we can do about it, and there's so many resources out there that can help us learn how to be more affirming of trans youth.
It's amazing, but I have an issue with this bathroom stuff because it's all based in fear. It's people that try to make these rules don't know somebody that's trans, they don't love them, and then but all it takes really is just getting to know somebody. That's the thing that I don't understand about it, is if you get to know somebody, then you know that those bathroom things or what everybody talks about, that's not an issue. It's really not an issue. And that's the thing about it, is trans individuals just want to feel safe in their own community. And it's crazy that they don't.
Could you please break it down for us? How do these interventions work, and what are the actual risks associated with them?
Okay, sure. Well, absolutely.
Gender-affirming care for young people has actually been around since the 1980s, and standards of care are set by the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. All leading healthcare organizations, including the Endocrine Society, American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Psychological Association agree that care outlined by WPATH,
including puberty suppression and hormone replacement therapy, is life-saving and essential care for young people that need it.
Puberty suppression is often the first stage of medical affirmation for young people with gender dysphoria.
It can start after puberty begins, and it's both safe and reversible.
Puberty suppression does not do anything permanent to the body. You can think of it as a pause button. It helps to reduce dysphoria associated with the physical changes of puberty
and allows young people and their families protected time to explore their gender identity and really clarify their goals for gender affirmation.
Hormone therapy is often the second stage of medical affirmation.
And it is stage 2 because it is semi-reversible. So taking estrogen or testosterone will make physical changes happen slowly over time. So we're talking years. And not all those changes will go away if a young person stops hormone therapy at some point after they begin. Hormone therapy is safe and effective, taken as directed. And patients are initially monitored every 3 months to ensure that they're feeling affirmed and they're not experiencing any adverse effects.
Wow, thank you so much, Jenny. I actually want to clarify something real quick, and I think you touched on it a little bit earlier. If a child is on puberty blockers and they decide to not continue transition and not to take on hormone replacement therapy, is that reversible, and does the same hold true for hormone replacement therapy?
Another great question. So not all young people who begin puberty suppression will move on to hormone replacement therapy, and that's okay. Puberty suppression is completely reversible. So it can be safely stopped at any time, and young people's, their own puberty will just resume. With hormone replacement therapy, it's considered semi-reversible. So each person's journey is their own, and if someone chooses to start hormone replacement therapy, it doesn't mean that they have to continue. If at any point they're not feeling affirmed, or they're having adverse effects, or for whatever reason they want to discontinue, that's okay. Before they start their therapy, they're counseled on some of the more permanent effects of hormone replacement. So that can be chest development if taking estrogen, or it could be a voice drop, facial and body hair and bottom growth if on testosterone. And they're also counseled on possible risks to fertility during and after treatment. And of course, counseled on any opportunities for fertility preservation if they wish to pursue it. But of course, levels of regret and detransition in youth are extremely low.
A 2022 study from the Netherlands showed that the majority, 98% of transgender adolescents who started gender-affirming hormones, estrogen or testosterone, continued them into adulthood.
And when detransition does occur, it's usually due to external factors, things like insurance issues, bullying, maybe limited parental support. Absolutely. So not so much due to a change in gender identity.
Gotcha. Which is interesting, because it's so much of the social, like what I'm so astounded by so far about what we've talked about is how impactful the social aspects are to the individual, not only in the suicidality and those pieces, but then in their actual rest of their care, right? And whether they're mentally equipped to deal with unsupportive parents, unsupportive other kids in school districts. I know that the thing that gets everyone really excited is the gender surgeries, gender-affirming surgeries. And I know that they're not done lightly. I know that they're done very rarely. But what information can you share with us about specifically children 18 and younger, where a lot of us are getting hung up and we're told a lot of crazy things if you look at the news, but like, how much is this happening? What's going on?
Well, you're absolutely right that gender-affirming surgery in minors is exceptionally rare, especially in Georgia. WPATH standards do say, though, that chest surgeries can be appropriate for some young people, typically over the age of 16, and generally trans-masculine individuals, that can be an appropriate pathway of care. This is because chest dysphoria can be so severe and can really heighten depression, anxiety, and impact activities of daily living, such as exercise. Also, outcomes from chest or top surgeries are very good, and patients report high levels of satisfaction and low regret. Lower surgeries, however, are not recommended for patients under 18.
Okay, so that's one of the big things that I hear all the time. That's a trigger for everybody, is they think that these kids are finding a way to circumvent the protocol, because there's protocols in place, correct? Like that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Like, there are steps that they have to go through, and they think that these kids can circumvent these protocols and just willy-nilly decide to go in and have a surgery without their parents, and that's not the case, correct?
Correct. So there are many safeguards in place all throughout gender-affirming care for young people, and parents and guardians are engaged every step of the way. As we discussed, standards of care and clinical practice guidelines have long been in place, and this is to ensure the safety of the young person. Parental consent is required at every stage, particularly before hormone replacement therapy. And comprehensive biopsychosocial assessments are also a really important tool to ensure the safety of young people. So these are thoughtful evaluations that are conducted by licensed mental health professionals to ensure that the young person meets criteria for gender incongruence or dysphoria, that they have clear expectations and goals for their gender affirmation, that they've demonstrated an appropriate capacity for decision making, and they have the necessary supports to be successful with their care. The unfortunate truth is that all of the anti-trans legislation, like what has been passed in Georgia, this is really the only thing that's limiting parental involvement in the decision-making in the health care of their children. Yeah, gender affirming care decisions, just like any healthcare decisions, should be made between patients and their families in partnership with their healthcare providers and not by our state legislators.
Thank you. Like, that was so much that we learned. It's something that we all need to know a little bit more about so that we can appropriately defend our parents and our children. I'm curious, though, as kind of a final question. So there's this wave of legislation, right? On a personal level, I'd like to know what you think of this legislation, and then how can we help the parents or children that may be facing into this in our state?
Thank you for asking. SB 140, like all anti-trans legislation, is based on discrimination and misinformation. The legislation will undoubtedly harm Georgia's gender-diverse youth, and it makes our state a less safe place for all of our youth. And it's imperative that we all stay informed, so thank you so much for hosting us all this evening, and that we practice affirmation in any way that we can. And again, those Fenway Health Institute resources are wonderful, and I love a book called Trans Kids and Teens, Pride, Joy, and Families in Transition by Dr. Elijah Neely. The two most protective factors for young people who are gender diverse is having affirming parents or other adult caregivers in their lives and having access to affirming care. So just by being a safe person in someone's life and creating safe spaces around us, we can quite literally save lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So important. So important.
So welcome to our parents. We are so glad to have you with us. I have talked to these individuals and I know their stories, and you're in for a treat. We do want to kick this off, first off, thanking R.S. Andrews.
R.S. Andrews is an HVAC company here in Atlanta that does an incredible job supporting us at the Gaily Dose, and you should check them out for any of your HVAC needs. rsandrews.com.
And tell them that the Gaily Dose sent you. All right, so our first question to everyone is really to try to get an idea of your stories for those that are out there. We're going to start off with Amanda, who transitioned her child at age 6.
So, gosh, my story is just that I have a child who's 13, and she's a beautiful little girl. She came out to me as feeling not her biological sex that she was born as when she was very, very young, probably about 3 or 4 years old. And at the time, my children were very involved in a specific church that we went to, and I was very involved in the children's ministry, and we talked about heaven often. And my child started saying things to me like, well, when God, when I die, I'm going to be, my soul is actually a girl, and my body's going to become a girl's. And I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. I was like, good, great. But I didn't really think too much about it. And then it started becoming more and more insistent. Around this time, she also started wearing her sister's clothes often and not wanting to ever take them off. And getting more and more upset when we went to, say, for instance, get her hair cut, things of that nature. And so I just started really praying about this situation, and being a believer, that's what was kind of recommended to me. All the counsel that I sought, that's what everybody said. And so that was the first thing that I did. In my mind's eye, I kept seeing the story, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Bible at all, but there's a story that this man Saul fell and heard the voice of God speaking to him, and nobody else who was around heard this voice. But when he heard it, he was blinded. And for 3 days, he was blinded. And he had to go to the house of this other man. It was kind of a convoluted story, but when the other person touched him, he suddenly could see. And I kept thinking and pondering about that, and I thought, you know, it's not everybody else who needs to change the way that they're thinking. It's me. I'm the one that needs to change the way I am seeing my child. And it was like, I mean,
light bulb, right?
It really was a light bulb moment for me. And that's when I started at least taking God out of the little box that I had God in, and believing that God is so much bigger than I could ever even imagine, and that perhaps this is exactly the way that God intended my child to be, and that she was exactly as she was supposed to be created. And so I started doing a lot of research, and that was really the first thing one of the first things that I did. I started just reading everything I could get my hands on about the transgender community and what the biblical translations and what all of this could possibly mean, trying to reconcile my faith with my child and how this can possibly be okay. And let me tell you that I finally got to the point where, after seeing developmental pediatricians and the regular pediatrician and gender-affirming therapists, gender non-affirming therapists, reading everything that I could on both sides, I finally came to the conclusion that it was like, okay, well, I can either, I have two choices. I can transition my child and allow her to live as she wants to live, or I can continue to fight this and not let her live the way that she wants to live, meanwhile making herself and everybody around completely miserable. And it was really at that point a no-brainer. It was just simply me wrapping my own mind around the fact that this is what God intended.
Yeah. I tell you, I can relate to that from the perspective of having also had a strong Christian background. Coming to that just within myself, it took such a time. I can only imagine how hard that would be to channel that for your kid, but you came to that conclusion. Now tell me, what is the result of that? What do you see in her? Do you think you made the right decision? And how did you get the initial feedback to keep going?
Well, let me tell you, the very first day that we did decide there was not going to be any more of her dead name, it was all Leah, we were fully in. From the very first day, she used to wet the bed every single night. The first
She's cringing
day,
over there, I just want you to know your daughter is
she probably is, but she should be very proud of herself, because that particular day that we transitioned her, she never wet the bed again. Like, I wish I'd done it sooner. Because there's been more joy. There's nothing that you want more. Right. There's nothing in the whole wide universe that you could ever ask for.
Now, I want to introduce Tim Johnson. So, Tim, you and I have known each other for years and years. I've known you, I know your family. You know, amazing to me to watch your entire family, you know, and what you guys went through. You know, I can't even imagine what it was like for you when your then son came to you in high school and said that he's a girl. What was that like for you?
Well, actually, it was a little bit after high school.
Okay.
And for me, it really wasn't difficult at all, because throughout my entire life, I've always had people that I knew that were LGBTQ my whole life. So it wasn't anything new. I grew up in a pretty small town called Hormone, Virginia, that for whatever reason, well, it was a one high school town. So all we needed to do was hate Petersburg. And so as long as you can help us hate Petersburg and keep them in football, you're okay. And so I remember we had one guy on our team, his name was Kurt. And he was gay, and he was a linebacker. He would wear a wig under his helmet.
Okay.
No one said anything. I knew a lady who was hermaphrodite. No one said anything. No one cared about who you were other than being and you were from Hopewell. I don't know if that helped or not. And then my stepdad, he always said that as long as someone hadn't done anything to him, then they were all right with him. And so I always had that perspective. And also, me personally, I like information. And so I already knew that beyond your phenotype, there's a lot of things that human beings exist under a spectrum. So I know what Klinefelter syndrome was. So it was nothing to me. I know that 10% of all animals are gay. So when Mallory came out and told us, it was really a relief to me because all throughout her life, I noticed that something was amiss and I didn't know what it was. And I felt less than a father because I couldn't figure it out. But what she did tell me, that I put together a lot of the clues that I've been missing for so long. So I was happy to find out and to support her.
How do you know it was a good decision? What was the feedback? And also, like, how did you approach, the care process?
Yeah, so I know it was a good decision because I see her smile now. All the time. And that was something that was missing. Didn't always smile. A lot of times would not. We'd go out and shop. We have 2 other kids. And Mallory wouldn't want to buy any clothes. And sometimes she would say, I don't need any clothes. I already have a pair of pants. Or, Dad, please don't cut my hair. And I didn't know what that meant. So, it upset me that I used to do it and I didn't know.
Yeah, but now you do.
Now I do.
You do.
And so, even though a person likes information, I think if more parents had more information, that they knew what it was, that they could recognize it in their children, and Amanda, for you to recognize that so early and help her out is tremendous. They could recognize that in their children, they could help them soon, because as a parent, what you're supposed to do is take care of your child.
Right.
And if more people understood this was just a natural thing, then they would be more accepting of it. They wouldn't let the world dictate to them how they treated their own child. And then have that, even if they come to terms with it later, have that in their soul, that they didn't advocate for their kid beyond the world. So that's what you really have to do. So I know it was the right decision. Mallory's a lot happier. I'm happier. Whole family's happier. It's great. I barely remember who she was before.
So now, our third parent for the evening is Claire here. She had the very hard task being called upon to represent in front of the government here in Georgia for SB 140 together with her son. And I thank you for your steadfast service because that kind of servanthood in our community is exactly the kind of living that we need to do. So I want to ask you, in kind like the others, tell us a little bit about the story of coming to learn and understand that your son was trans. Is trans,
yeah. And it totally caught me off guard. I had no idea. And he transitioned in 7th grade, came home and told me that his boyfriend had broken up with him by note and tossed the note on my desk. And I was like, I knew it was, that I was like, maybe it's Valentine's Day, but I'm sorry. Do you think we can still be friends? Because I know you're close. And he's like, yeah, but it's going to be awkward, but we'll be friends. But I just need to, I was going to break up with him anyways.
Okay.
Because I'm going through some really heavy stuff right now. And I was like, can you tell me what you're going through? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm going to go get a glass of milk. I'll be right back. And I was like, could you give me a shot while you're here? Oh my God. And came back and said, Mom, I've been dropping clues. I missed them. I cut my hair really short. And I thought you liked being the only girl with really short hair. I told you I don't want to have biological children. Well,
so have my daughters.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was like, I didn't want to have you until I was like mid-30s. So I just dispense with that. I was like, are you gay? Like, no, I'm overweight. And I was like, that's a whole different kind of sex. And I was like, I wish I could have pulled it back in. And said, Mom, it has nothing to do with that. I was like, I know, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I have trans friends. I'm a former journalist. I can ask questions. I can learn. I'm so glad you told me. I love you. You need to tell your dad. And he said, I'm not ready to tell Dad. So, like, you have to, because I have to have somebody to talk to about this. And so Dad was on a trip, and when he came back, he knew something was up because we were sitting there. And he said, what's up, boo? And Sam said, Dad, I'm trans. And he said, I love you fiercely.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, I wish I'd said that. Good job, Dad. But he wanted his child to know that he loved him no matter what. And we sort of led with that the whole way through.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about the journey in healthcare, right? Like, how did you steer forward from there? And then what's the net result? How is your son today?
He's happy. He's in college in Washington State. It's, you go through a lot of doctor's appointments. We went and saw a therapist because you want to make sure that there's not something else going on that makes you not want to be who you are. And I needed help understanding. Sam needed ways to talk to me about what was going on. And so the therapist was really good about helping us to have those conversations. And we saw doctors too, and it's not a quick process. And we decided to have Sam go on testosterone when he was about 13, I think, probably about a year afterwards. And he, at age 16, had top surgery. And I'm a breast cancer survivor, so I sort of think it's kind of prophylactic in a way. And he is so happy with how he looks. He's a good-looking guy. I mean, yeah. He's a good-looking guy.
My daughter, she actually came to me when she was 13. And she told me she was a boy living in a girl's body. And she actually said, I think I'm trans, Mappa. My daughter calls me Mappa. As a parent, I was shocked. Now, I wasn't as shocked as being the activist that I am. So I put her in touch with people I know. I mean, I'm lucky I'm a part of this community. I've been, been an activist for, 30 or 40 years of my life. So I took her to somebody at the gay center here, the Philip Rush Center, and I took her to see James Sheffield, who had just finished transitioning. And, I let her discuss it with him. I had all the other signs of my daughter, so I personally didn't think that she was trans. I can tell you now, my daughter is 18 years old, and my daughter is completely gender fluid. I've been educated by my daughter on what she is, and she is gender fluid.
I was talking to my daughter just yesterday, and she was saying that one of the things that we need most of all is education.
Yes.
And I could not agree more. I think that the educational aspect of, and actually the misinformation that is out there and the things that are made up that have nothing to do with the reality of the situation is what is so maddening, and also the stuff that that seems to keep circulating. I feel like the more that we keep talking about the facts, I'm hopeful that the more people will finally understand.
We were hanging out, and I was a parent, and I said, you know what? I agree with these bans. I think that kids aren't ready for this kind of care, and we just don't know enough. The science just isn't there enough, and I just don't. I think that it's fine, right? What would you tell me to try to convince me, perhaps, that maybe I should rethink my perspective?
I would say, well, that's very nice that you have that opinion.
You wouldn't
or
do that.
Right. I might not use those exact words. But I would say that would you feel the same way if your child were born without a limb? Would you say that a prosthetic or perhaps a wheelchair or maybe crutches should be illegal? Because that is not the way that that they should just learn how to deal with not walking or not have an arm. I mean, what would be the difference?
So what if I'm a parent who is facing into the challenges of having a young child or having someone that's questioning, right? And I'm asking these questions and the laws are going the way they are and I'm afraid. How would you encourage me as a parent who's sitting here at the barbecue with you facing into this newly?
I would just say to the trans parents of trans kids, and I know a huge community of them, and I actually have some friends who've already left the state because of this law. I would say stay, because there's going to be an ACLU lawsuit that will hopefully stop it and extend the period. And find your community. If you don't have one already, TransparentUSA.org is an organization for parents of transgender kids. And our providers will help us find care for our kids. And I feel like we're going to be okay. That if it's much more accepted than Republicans make it out to be. and if the world is going to be like my kid, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Good for you guys.
Our call to action is brought to you by our episode sponsor, Realty Rodney High Note. Whether you're buying or selling in Atlanta or Georgia or looking beyond, reach out to Rodney at AnsleyRE.com and he will give you the best advice to get you into the next best place for you and with the best financial outcome. Thank you, Rodney, for your support for our community, and tell him that the Gaily Dose sent you. And here's how you can make a difference. If you're a praying person, pray for the success of the ACLU and that judges will not allow the infringement of these children and their parents. Get active in voting. This is a very serious issue, and it's a problem in our LGBTQ community. We need to vote. Finally, if you are LGBTQ in the rainbow spectrum, get to know a trans person or a parent of one in your local community. Support them, love them, and encourage them. I happen to know a lot of them. One of them happens to be me.
It's incredible how much more real the issue is when you talk to a clinician and you hear the stories of these parents. Fantastic. I'm very thankful for them. I'm curious what your final thoughts are on this as a team.
As a panel? Ooh.
I'll go first.
You can go.
All right. Well, I'm not a parent, but I know a parent. I know many parents. I have parents. I also know trans people. And they are great, wonderful, loving, caring, intelligent people, just like each and every one of you. So all I know is that it hurts me to see children having to flee states just to receive life-saving care.
That's right.
We need a lot more diversity and representation out in the world, out in power, in positions of power. So please, embrace your differences, embrace each other, learn from each other, stay curious, share love, but most importantly, go out,
I'm waiting.
Get active, and vote. Vote.
Yes. That's the best thing that I've heard from Daniel, because we had a little discussion a while back about Daniel not voting, and we had to discuss and debate about what was good and what his vote actually meant to have.
I transitioned into a voter.
Yes, and it was amazing. It's amazing to see
the whole coming out.
Right? It's amazing to see the transition. But the biggest thing that we can take away too is that we can make action. We can do it by a little bit at a time. And you can do that at www.acluga.org. Make a donation, whatever you can do. Like I said before, it doesn't matter how much. Any little bit helps. We all can do our part. And we want to hold everyone accountable too, like I've told people before. And that means from the bottom up, your local elections, school boards, city councilmen, judges, your sheriff, all of these things impact the legislation that's being put forward today, because we all know it's a good old boy network and we have to get into that network. So make sure that you're voting, donating, and we're taking care of our kids, okay?
These parents, they just want to save and encourage the life of their child with the best that medicine has to offer. And instead, our lawmakers are hurting these children, and in some cases, they are killing them through their own suicides. And it's inhumane, and frankly, it's un-American. And we find ourselves as a country at a crucial juncture, presenting an incredible opportunity for growth and for change. It's essential we come together and embrace this accountability ourselves as Americans. We need to strive for an America that empowers the well-being of our trans children, and a place where gay school children can go to school and receive the unwavering support just like their heterosexual peers. And we need to envision a future where every child can attend their school or visit the mall without the fear of violence. It's not safe for children in our country. Exciting moments await us in our season 4. We're going to talk about more challenging topics. We're going to talk about the book bans. We're going to talk about the drag bans. And we're going to talk about some concerns around even the institution of gay marriage in this country. And to do this, we're going to need to unite as a community. And we're going to be able to get there. We're just going to have to all agree on one thing that unites us all, regardless of religion, regardless of whether you're gay or you're straight, and that's love.
Yes. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yes. Awesome. And remember to share the show. Share with your friends. Follow us online. Spread the word. And if you want to connect about this topic, just message us online. Find us through our website, thegailydose.com. And as we say farewell, stand up. Be seen.
Lead with love and love for you and everyone else. Can I get a hell yeah?
Hell yeah! We're done.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you guys.
Everybody.